Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another short war video, and today we have very big news to cover out of Ukraine, Russia, China, and Venezuela, and let's jump right into it. This morning, footage has emerged showing Ukraine launching a devastating strike on one of Russia's critical thermal power plants that provides power for the entire city of Moscow, and right now the Russians are starting emergency measures to respond to the situation. Meanwhile, US and Ukrainian officials are currently negotiating in Geneva about the so-called peace plan, and it appears that limited progress is being made according to new reporting. We also have news out of Venezuela that diplomats are leaving the country in droves as the U.S. prepares a new phase of the operation to oust Maduro, and we also just gotten a bombshell report that China has vowed to safeguard Venezuelan sovereignty in a very big move, and we've also got news out of Japan that Japan is now deploying missiles right off the island of Taiwan to combat a potential Chinese invasion. So very big news around the world yet again today, and let's jump right into our first article, which goes to OSINT Technical. And right now this is one of our largest stories of the day. We are hearing that last night, Ukrainian forces hit one of Moscow's largest power stations, the Shatura thermal power plant, and right here in the post, we have a video showing a massive explosion on the northern side of the plant, and it looks like it hit the turbine hall, which would take this plant out of action, and these were some very large explosions. And also, just to emphasize, the reason why this plant is so important is because this is one of the main plants that feeds electricity right into downtown Moscow, which is obviously where the Kremlin is located, and this is a very critical plant. So the Russians are panicking this morning about this thing getting hit, and it looks like Ukraine carried out a devastating attack on it last night. So let's take a look at our first video and see the explosion happening on camera. And right there you can see there's the explosion. And that is a massive explosion right there. I'm going to go ahead and mute the audio because the woman in the background was really freaking out about this. But you can see right here, that is a big hit right there. That appears to be multiple explosions in a row on the same spot right there. And we believe this was a drone attack. We do not believe missiles were used in this, but it looks like a drone attack on the side of the building. And this is the northern side of the plant. So a very big hit here in our first video right there. But also, by the way, we do have some more down here from OSINT Technical. There's a picture showing the exact moment of the secondary explosion or an impact, we're not really sure, but also we have one more video down here showing the response of the Russian firefighters showing up to the scene, which that's pretty fast response for the Russian firefighters, I must admit. So let's take a look at this video. And right there you can see that is a blazing fire, and there's a firefighter standing right back here sort of just staring at it for the moment, but that is a huge fire right there, and you can hear the absolute ferocity behind it. It is ferocious right there, as you can see. So a very big fire. But jumping away from this video right here and jumping into our next piece of news, we were seeing that Russian sources were saying that the drone was technically destroyed, but I don't think that looks like a destroyed drone to me. It looks like it made it to its target and struck it, in fact, many times in a row. And finally, we do have one more image here, a very clear image showing the side of the power plant on fire in multiple different spots, which seems to basically disprove the Russians and saying that it was shot down. So a very bad hit on that power plant, but we have even more news than that in our next post here, which goes to War Translated. And right here in this post, we have even more footage from the Shatura power station, and we do see the drone flying in, which appears to be a Ukrainian FP-1 drone, and we see the Russians shooting small arms fire at it in this video. So let's take a look at this one. So there you can see the Russians are unleashing hell on this thing. And there's the drone right there. The Russians are letting into this thing. Look at that. And it looks like it actually hit on the substation right there. I'm going to go ahead and mute that, by the way, but it looks like it hit on the substation of the power plant. So there's the drone once again flying in on a clearer view. Look at it. It's literally taking evasive actions to avoid it. To me, it looks like the drone hit its target because it looks like it still flew right in and did its final descent. So I don't think the Russians were successful, even though they were literally unloading like a year's worth of ammo on that one drone. I don't think they were successful. So that was also another big hit right there by another drone flying in. But moving on from that, we're actually moving into our next post here, which goes to Tartargami, Ukraine, and we also have another video here showing another 4th or 5th drone flying in right to the same power plant. This was a very big attack and a very thorough one at that. So let's take a look. So as you can see here, this is a Russian filming from his apartment, commie block, whatever you want to call it. Let me go ahead and mute him, by the way, just sort of talking here. But as you can see, he's opening a window to get a better view of this, and he's looking out and he's hearing something in the distance, which you really couldn't pick up on the audio very much. But look, there was an explosion right over there to the right, and that was Shatura going up in flames right over there. So that's another view of it from a resident's perspective, I guess you could say, of the town, filming that thing flying in. But anyways, moving on to our next one here. It looks like the Russians are panicking because this morning we have this post from Max 25, which shows the Russians starting emergency measures after this plant was basically destroyed in a large part. So let's take a look at this one. And right here we can see that in Shatura, 10 mobile power plants are already at the entrance to the city, and this indicates the complete incapacity of the Shatura State District Power Plant. And right here you can see there they are lined up right in front of the city of Shatura, which is where the power plant was located, and these are emergency power supply stations according to the reports that we have, and this indicates that the facility was likely taken offline in its entirety and also made inoperative. So that's a very big response right there. And like I said, this plant supplied power right to Moscow, so the Russians cannot afford this one to be out. This is one right here that the Kremlin can't afford to be out, so they are bringing in pretty much the heavy guns right now to tend to the situation. So Ukraine, that was a big hit last night, a very big win for them. But with that, folks, we're moving on from our news about the power station and moving into our next big story, which is about the whole diplomatic situation between the United States and Ukraine, and also the ongoing negotiations right now between those two parties in Geneva. But before we get to our news about negotiations, we have to jump into a very large post that was made this morning by the United States president. And as much as I don't want to cover this, I kind of have to, because this is the top official in the United States that we have to see what he's saying. So let's take a quick look here at the post and go over a little bit of the most important part of it about what he said this morning. And right here, the president said, "I inherited a war that should have never happened, a war that is a loser for everyone, especially the millions of people that have so needlessly died, and Ukraine leadership has expressed zero gratitude for our efforts, and Europe continues to buy oil from Russia." So I'm going to stop right there, by the way. There's the rest of it's really unimportant, but I'm going to have to call this one for what it is, folks. I'm not trying to take a political side here, but this one is blatantly false. Ukraine leadership has expressed gratitude so many times. In fact, there was a huge stink about it about 6 months ago by the U.S. president about Ukraine not showing any gratitude. So Zelensky went through a whole horse and pony show, basically, to say thank you a million times over, to express gratitude verbally, and now the U.S. president's claiming there's been zero gratitude, which is blatantly false, and pretty much everybody can see that. But anyways, moving on from that, and we're moving into our next post here. This one's going to go to open source intel yet again, and we've also heard from the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. He said the war can only end with Ukraine's unconditional consent, and he said this after the U.S. was trying to pressure Zelensky into this so-called peace deal that happened to mirror Russian talking points almost identically. So it looks like Europe is still very much opposed to the so-called peace deal the U.S. is putting forward, which is a good sign, and also it looks like pretty much both parties in the United States are opposed to it as well. The only people that aren't opposed to it is the current U.S. administration and the Russians. So quite interesting with that. But once again, Merz is making a stand for Ukraine and saying that Ukraine must have a say in the talks, which is pretty much common sense. And it's kind of sad that has to be said out loud, because I thought that would be basic knowledge there, but apparently it's not. But anyways, moving into our next post here. This one goes to Max 25, and we have gotten our first photo of the negotiations between the U.S. and Ukraine in Geneva. And right here, let's take a look at the individuals in the photo. As you can see on the left here, Marco appears to be extremely angry looking over here, or very, very frustrated. Witkoff looks clueless. Also over here, we have all the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians look like they're tired and they've been run through the ringer, which I would understand why they feel that way. But this is the talks right here. And as you can see, not very happy faces right now. They don't look very happy. None of them do. And also, I'll be honest with you, this picture says 1,000 words right here. Like the looks on these guys' faces, it really says 1,000 words. So that's what we're seeing right now in Geneva. But moving into our next post here, this one's going to go to War Translated. And we've also actually, believe it or not, gotten some somewhat positive news out of these talks. And right now we've heard from the Ukrainian Presidential Office head Yermak. He's reporting productive talks with U.S. counterparts, achieving a real progress toward lasting peace, with teams continuing to work today and in the coming days to refine proposals alongside European partners. So that basically is a very diplomatic way of saying there's a lot of work to still be done, but it's not falling apart completely. But at the same time, though, Ukraine really has no choice but to at least pretend like they're going along with this, because if they oppose it, then they likely will lose U.S. aid. So they're walking a fine line here to keep support and also not sell their country out at the same time. So it's a tough situation that the Ukrainians are in right now, and it looks like they're doing their best to navigate it, and we'll have to see where this goes. But also, by the way, folks, you might remember that yesterday we were questioning the actual peace document that the U.S. is pushing forward. We were saying, what is this document? Because was it actually authored by the United States officials, or was it authored by somebody else? Right now, that's not really clear. The U.S. officials are claiming it was authored by the U.S., but there's a lot of skepticism about that, because it looks like the plan was basically a Russian plan. It looked like it mirrored Russian talking points almost to a T. And right now, we're even hearing the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, he's now questioning the origins of the 28-point peace plan. And right now, we're seeing a post from him right here. So let's take a look at it. And Donald Tusk said right here in his post, he said, together with the leaders of Europe, Canada, and Japan, we have declared our readiness to work on the 28-point peace plan despite some reservations about it. However, before we start our work, it would be good to know for sure who is the author of the plan and where it was created. So that is even Poland questioning who even authored this plan right here, despite the U.S. claiming they authored it. Even heads of state are questioning whether or not that was a Russian document at this point. So I want to emphasize, there is no proof that the Russians authored the document, but it has a odd appearance to it. It smells very fishy about the way it was worded. So right now it's up for debate, but I have my own feelings about it, and me personally, it's looking fishy. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Conflict Radar. And also, let's move on from our news about the circus of diplomacy going on right now and move on to our news about Venezuela, because there's real action being taken right now in Venezuela by the U.S. officials, and we have seen that Venezuela's airspace has been cleared after several airlines suspended flights due to the current situation. So as you can see right here, this is a post from Flight Radar 24. The Venezuela's airspace is empty, completely cleared out after the U.S. issued a NOTAM for the area about a day or two ago. So pretty much all the flights are avoiding it, and we also saw several major airlines cancel all flights to Venezuela effective yesterday. So something is about to happen. We've heard reports that something's going to happen very soon. Not sure what it's going to look like, but we do expect it to happen in the near future, but we can't really predict to a certainty when that will be. But jumping into our next post, this one goes to Fintech's network. And in addition to the airspace being cleared out, we're also getting reports of diplomats leaving Caracas very quickly. And this was a report from a Fox News reporter, Jennifer Griffin right here. And we can see in her Twitter post, she said, this is as reports of diplomats leaving Caracas. And also, like I mentioned, flights being canceled due to the massive buildup off of Venezuela's shores. So right now we're also hearing apparently that Venezuelan diplomats are fleeing the scene as they expect something is coming soon. So that's the first time we've heard of the diplomats fleeing as of right now. So another big sign that something is coming very quickly. But jumping into our next one here, this one's also going to go to Ocean Defender, and we've also seen that another U.S. Air Force B-52 Stratofortress was seen taking off from Spain and heading across the Atlantic Ocean, maybe to Venezuela, possibly so, but we do see that here on the actual Flight Radar 24. There is no location specified right here, but it did take off from Moron Air Base in Spain, if that's how you say it, and it's right now over the ocean. So that's what we're seeing right now. You can call it Moron Base, you can call it Moron Base, whatever you fancy, that's what you can call it. It's coming from Spain. But also, we've gotten a very, very big report right now. This one goes to Insider Paper, and this is a bombshell right here. We are hearing from certain sources that China says it will continue supporting Venezuela to safeguard its sovereignty and security. So that's a big one. That is one of the rare statements coming out of China saying they're going to safeguard Venezuela. We're not sure what that means. Right now, it typically means they're going to keep supporting Venezuela with weapons and also arms, but it could mean something else. We're not really sure just yet, but China is weighing in a rare instance right here, saying it's going to support Maduro and Venezuela to safeguard its security. So a very big one. Not sure what it means just yet, but that's a big weigh-in by the Chinese government. But with that, we're moving into our next post here, which goes to Jeff Ramsey, and we've got an interesting poll results right here coming from a news source right now, showing that a large majority of Americans oppose U.S. military action in Venezuela, and they express doubts about the impact of military action on drug flows to the United States. So let's take a look at the polls. Take them for what you will, by the way. Some people say that polls are accurate. Some people say polls are inaccurate. It's totally up to your subjective opinion, but let's take a look and see what the polls actually say according to the reports that we're getting right now. So taking a look at our first question here, it's a question about the U.S. taking military action in Venezuela, and it looks like 70% of Americans oppose that according to the poll, and only about 30% would favor it. So that's quite revealing right there if you believe the poll. 70% of Americans apparently oppose it. So also, let's take a look at our second question here. It said, what is your opinion on U.S. military action in Venezuela about making the amount of drugs entering the U.S. basically decrease? 56% said there will be no change even after military action, and only about 37% said there will be a decrease in drugs entering the United States. And also, for some reason, about 7% of people said the drugs will increase to the United States, which that's kind of an interesting answer to the question right there, kind of unexpected. But as you can see here, if you believe the polls, it looks like a lot of Americans actually oppose action in Venezuela, and we've been vocal here on the channel as well. While Venezuela is a situation that must be addressed because of the Chinese influence in that country, it's not really good timing right now because Russia and Ukraine is really getting crazy. We're also seeing that the China-Taiwan situation could pop off any day now, and we got stuff going on in the Middle East. We got stuff going on pretty much everywhere. So to get bogged down in Venezuela and deploy about 20% of U.S. naval assets to the region, that seems unwise, and it looks like actually a good bit of Americans actually oppose military action in Venezuela. So that's also very fascinating if that does turn out to be completely true. But jumping into our next one here, this one's going to go to Visegrad 24. And speaking of Taiwan, we got some big news right now about Japan taking action against China. Because we can see right now that Japan is flexing those military muscles, and I'm kind of shocked by this, but it looks like Japan has refused to bow down to Chinese pressure over Taiwan and announces that it's deploying medium-range missiles to Yonaguni Island, just 110 kilometers east of Taiwan, which is extremely close, and Japan says it's doing so to decrease the likelihood of a Chinese invasion attempt against Taiwan. So just to show you this, by the way, this is how close Yonaguni Island is, which is a Japanese island to Taiwan, and the Japanese just announced they're deploying medium-range missiles to the island, and they're already having a very, very diplomatic, in fact, it's turning really ugly actually, a row with China, and this is naturally going to escalate that quite a bit. So, got to give the Japanese credit. They've got balls to do this because China is a pretty large military force, and while Japan is no weakling, it's not as large as China. So, that's interesting. They're deploying missiles right off of Taiwan to combat a Chinese invasion of the island, which is quite crazy to see. That's a very big move by Japan. Honestly, good on them, but that's a pretty bold move if I do say so. But with that, folks, that is actually our last post of the video. So if you found the video informative, smack that like button, and also if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel to keep up to date about the real-time events around the world, and we cover those in real time all the time. So if there's something major happening around the world, we are always here to cover it on the short videos and our nightly streams. So be sure to subscribe and also put a like on the video. And also, by the way, a huge shout out to everybody that leaves kind comments every day. I forget to mention this sometimes, but we do greatly appreciate those kind comments. We read them all, as many as we possibly can, and we do appreciate that very much. And also, if you want to support our channel financially, you can do so on our Patreon page, and the link is in the description below for Patreon, where you can go over there and sign up for a monthly membership, and it could be as little as $5 or $10 a month. Any amount helps the channel tremendously, and we appreciate our Patreon supporters very, very much. But with that, folks, we will see you all tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, and of course, tonight is Sunday night, so it is the fundraiser night on our stream tonight, where we'll raise more funds to help those in Ukraine. While the U.S. is waffling, we will still be helping those in Ukraine. So with that, we'll see you all at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight on the stream on YouTube, right here on the channel, and with that, bye-bye for now.